The rain began without warning, the kind that soaked through clothes in seconds and turned streets into mirrors of trembling light. Ayan stood beneath the flickering awning of a closed pharmacy, his phone dead in his hand and his backpack heavy with the kind of worries that couldn't be put down. He had left the office later than usual, his mind cluttered with deadlines and a quiet fear he hadn't named yet, the fear that he was slipping behind in a life that demanded speed he no longer felt he had. The bus stop was 2 blocks away. Normally, the walk would have been nothing. Tonight, with the rain pressing like a weight and his shoes already squelching, it felt like a small trial. He stepped off the curb and felt his ankle twist sharply. Pain shot up his leg, bright and sudden. He stumbled, caught himself on a lamppost, and waited for the ache to settle. It didn't. Ayan exhaled slowly, steadying himself. The city kept moving around him, umbrellas blooming and shrinking, headlights slicing through the rain. He tested his foot again. The pain flared, enough to make him grit his teeth. He could still walk, he told himself, just slower. He always told himself that. By the time he reached the bus stop, the shelter was crowded. People stood shoulder to shoulder, damp and tired, eyes fixed on the road as if willing the bus to appear sooner. Ayan leaned against the glass wall, trying to keep weight off his ankle. The rain found its way under the shelter anyway, drifting in sideways. The bus arrived late and already full. When the doors opened, a wave of warm air and bodies pressed out. The driver shook his head apologetically. "Next one," he said, and closed the doors before anyone could protest. Ayan felt something sink in his chest. He checked the schedule. 25 minutes. He shifted his foot again and winced. He could call a ride, he thought, but his phone was dead. He could walk, but the thought of navigating wet streets on a bad ankle made his stomach tighten. He stood there, unsure what to do, embarrassed by the vulnerability he suddenly felt in public, surrounded by strangers who were all busy with their own lives. A woman beside him noticed his expression. She was older, her hair pulled back neatly, rain beating on the collar of her coat. She followed his gaze to his foot. "You all right?" she asked gently. "Yeah," Ayan said automatically. "Just a twist." She nodded, as if she knew the word didn't cover it. "Next bus won't be kind to that," she said. "I've been there." He smiled weakly. "I'll manage." She didn't push. She just shifted slightly, making space so he could lean more comfortably against the glass. It was a small thing, but it eased him a little. The rain softened, then picked up again. Minutes dragged. The crowd thinned as people found rides or gave up and walked. When the next bus finally arrived, it was even more crowded. Ayan watched people surge forward, instinctively protecting their dry spots and personal space. He hesitated, knowing the jostling would be painful. A man stepped out of the bus instead of into it. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket soaked through at the shoulders. He looked around, then his eyes landed on Ayan. "You going this way?" he asked, gesturing back toward the bus. Ayan shook his head. "Can't really stand in there right now." The man glanced at Ayan's ankle, the way he was favoring it. He didn't ask anything else. "Come on," he said, stepping aside. He spoke to the driver briefly, words lost in the rain, and then turned back. "There's a seat up front." Ayan hesitated. "It's okay. I can wait." The man shook his head once. "You shouldn't." He offered his arm, not gripping, just there if needed. Something in the simplicity of the gesture loosened the knot in Ayan's chest. He took the arm and stepped onto the bus. The driver watched, expression softening, and waited until Ayan was seated before pulling away. As the bus lurched forward, Ayan realized how much pain he'd been holding at bay. Sitting down, he let himself breathe. The man stood nearby, steadying himself with one hand on the rail. When Ayan looked up to thank him, the man just nodded, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They rode in silence for a few stops. The bus hummed, rain drumming against the windows. People stared at their phones, lost in private worlds. When the man got off, he raised a hand briefly and disappeared into the rain. Ayan sat there, feeling something warm spread through him that had nothing to do with the bus heater. Help, freely given, without questions or conditions. It felt rare, and he didn't quite know what to do with it. He got off near his apartment, the rain finally easing into a mist. The walk home was slower than usual, but manageable. Each step still hurt, but the pain felt different now, less isolating. He thought about the woman at the shelter, the man on the bus, the quiet way they had noticed and acted. The next morning, his ankle was swollen and stiff. He wrapped it carefully and decided to work from home. From his window, he watched the street below wake up, vendors setting up stalls, children dodging puddles, the usual rhythm of the neighborhood. Around noon, there was a knock at his door. Ayan frowned, not expecting anyone. He opened it to find his neighbor from down the hall, a young man he recognized only in passing. He held a small paper bag. "I heard you limping last night," the neighbor said, smiling sheepishly. "I hope that's not weird. I twisted my ankle once and it was awful. Thought you might need these." He held up the bag. Inside were bandages and a small tube of pain relief gel. Ayan stared for a moment, surprised. "That's really kind of you." The neighbor shrugged. "No big deal. My sister sent me extras last time. Figured they should go to use." They chatted briefly, then the neighbor left, waving as he went. Ayan closed the door and leaned against it, feeling a lump rise in his throat. He hadn't asked for help. He hadn't even mentioned his injury. And yet, it had arrived. Over the next few days, his ankle improved. He ventured out cautiously, noticing things he usually rushed past. The elderly man at the corner shop who slipped an extra apple into his bag because they were getting soft anyway. The woman at the cafe who brought his coffee to his table when she saw him struggle with the tray. None of them made a show of it. None of them waited for thanks. On Friday evening, as he headed home from a short walk, he saw a young girl standing near the crosswalk, her backpack nearly as big as she was. She looked uncertain, glancing at the traffic light, then back at the road. Cars rushed past, splashing water from the curb. Ayan stopped a few steps away, not wanting to startle her. When the light changed, he crossed alongside her, matching her pace. He didn't say anything, just stayed close enough that drivers slowed, noticing an adult presence. On the other side, the girl smiled up at him. "Thank you," she said simply, then ran off toward a row of houses. Ayan stood there for a moment after she left, feeling the echo of the word. "Thank you." It felt different on the receiving end now that he had learned how it felt to be seen. That weekend, he volunteered at a community cleanup he had signed up for months ago and nearly forgotten. His ankle still twinged, but he worked slowly, picking up litter along the riverbank. At one point, he noticed an older man struggling with a heavy bag of trash. Without thinking, Ayan took one end and lifted. The man looked surprised, then relieved. "Didn't even get to ask," the man said with a chuckle. Ayan smiled. "You didn't have to." As the sun dipped low, casting gold across the water, Ayan felt a quiet shift inside him. He realized how often he had moved through life with his head down, determined not to be a burden, equally determined not to get involved. It had felt safer that way. But safety, he was learning, came at the cost of connection. On Monday, back at the office, a new colleague struggled with a presentation, her voice shaking as the projector refused to cooperate. The room grew restless. Ayan stood, walked over, and helped adjust the settings. He didn't draw attention to it. He just did it. When the slides finally appeared, the colleague's shoulders relaxed. She caught his eye and mouthed a silent thank you. At lunch, he overheard someone worrying about a missed deadline because of a sick parent. He offered to help, redistributing tasks so the load was lighter. It wasn't heroic. It didn't fix everything. But it mattered. That evening, as he waited at the same bus stop where the rain had changed everything, he noticed a man pacing, checking his phone repeatedly. Ayan asked if he was okay. The man sighed, explaining his phone was about to die and he was trying to find an address. Ayan offered his charger, a small thing he now carried with him intentionally. The man's relief was immediate, almost overwhelming. The bus arrived, and they boarded together. Ayan found himself smiling, not because his life had suddenly become easy, but because it felt fuller. Softer around the edges. Later that night, lying in bed, he thought about how help had come to him when he hadn't known how to ask. How it had changed the shape of his days. He understood now that kindness didn't always announce itself. Often, it arrived quietly, in the space between noticing and acting, asking nothing in return. And he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that he wanted to be part of that quiet movement. The kind that steps in, holds steady, and makes the road a little easier to walk, especially when no one has the words to ask for it.